So in a video I made a few days ago, I had mentioned that the Sony PlayStation 4 DualShock controller was getting a new accessory. So for $30 you can get a programmable back button that just plugs into the auxiliary port on the DualShock 4, and I had kind of speculated that maybe this was due to the fact that the PlayStation 5 will have a new controller with additional buttons on the back. And it just so happens that today news broke that Sony has actually got a patent for a new controller design with new features. What are those features? Part of them are back buttons, but this time the back buttons are built in, no accessories needed. So this article says Sony received patent approval for a new PlayStation DualShock controller earlier this week. The patent was discovered on the World Intellectual Property Organization database and features at least one visibly identifiable new feature. As reported by Polygon, the patent for the new DualShock was approved on December 26th. The front of the controller is similar to the existing PlayStation 4, but it differs in that the new PlayStation controller patent has no home button on the front. And the biggest change is it has two back triggers that appear to be built into the controller. Go on to say it's unknown what the patent is for specifically. While there's a chance this design could be intended for the PlayStation 5, there's an equal chance that this design is meant for other products like the existing PlayStation consoles, and furthermore, companies oftentimes request patents and never actually use them, just so that they can make sure that they lock in any designs that they might want to do down in the future if they feel like it or if the market demands it. But I think what's going to happen here is either these are going to be special controllers that Sony are going to release, kind of more like the elite controllers like Xbox offers, or what they're going to do is this is the new PlayStation 5 controller. But I honestly think that if they're going to come out with an accessory that you can program buttons for the PlayStation 4, then I think that this controller might be universal, at least across PS4 and PS5 consoles. That's just what I think. That's what I think would be the smart thing to do, or at least the most common sense thing to do, right? I mean, you can use a PlayStation 4 controller to a limited extent on a PlayStation 3. It doesn't work quite the same sometimes. A few buttons, they don't operate nearly the same, but you can still use it, so it's somewhat compatible. And in the same way, without having a home button on the new controller, maybe it's going to be the same sort of deal where the controller is going to be mostly compatible for PlayStation 4s, but it's going to be fully compatible for the PlayStation 5. Or this could just be a new PlayStation 4 controller they're going to release, like an elite controller that's not at all compatible with a PlayStation 5, but with the console being released in just under a year, I would say most likely this is potentially a patent, at least for a different version of the PlayStation 5 controller. They might still have their original design. I know their new controller is going to have a different rumble feature, so they've obviously already got a patent for that and have planned to put that in the new controllers. So we'll just have to see if this is something that they will just strictly keep to the PlayStation 5, or maybe it will be for both consoles. But with that being said, it is pretty cool that we're going to be getting a new controller design. I love the PlayStation 4 design. I think it fits in my hand so well. And I really love the fact that they at least gave us an accessory to add back buttons. Just doing that, if this is the new PlayStation 5 controller, if I do end up, or if you do end up getting the accessory on the PlayStation 4, perhaps it could make switching to the PlayStation 5 controller a little bit easier, because there really was kind of a learning curve on the new controller versus the PlayStation 3 when I first got my PlayStation 4, just because there was a few additional buttons. You had the touchpad, and the feel of it was just completely different, and the back triggers worked differently. But I do think that one of the problems that Sony could possibly face, and why this controller might not be universal, or why these back buttons might not be used to their full extent, if this isn't just the default design, right? If the default controller for the PlayStation 5 is not this new controller with the back buttons, then programming games and the use of those buttons is probably going to fall short or not going to be used in many games. I can think of the touchpad, for an example, on the PlayStation 4. Sure, there's some games that utilize it, and even fewer of those games that utilize it pretty well, but a majority of games don't really utilize the touchpad like they could or like they should, which I don't mind using the touchpad. I think there's many cool things that you could do with it. Probably even more cooler things you could do now with back buttons. But if they did roll this out as just an additional upgraded controller, and then they rolled out a different design for the default controller, I could see game studios just not really taking it to heart and not implementing that into their game, which, it's kind of like one of those deals where you add some extra features and they're just rarely, if ever, used. But we'll just have to see. Either way, I'm excited. The more options we have, the better. It's always about the consumer choice, right? We get more stuff, and that's awesome. We get upgraded stuff, and that's cool too. So yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you like the idea of this controller? Would you like to have the back buttons as an option? Do you want this to be the default controller? Would you rather it be just an elite option like the Xbox? Anything you think, just leave a comment down below. Remember to like, subscribe, and that's it.